Welcome back for another HotTake Hotteok, a short-form episode where we discuss the latest scandals, controversies, and breaking news in South Korean pop culture. In this episode, we cover SM Entertainment and the events leading up to the sale of founder and executive producer Lee Soo Man's company shares to HYBE Corporation. We'll provide background about Lee Soo Man, SM's business strategies over the decades, and provide context on rising tensions in the company. Grab a plate and take a seat, because we're serving up some hot takes.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Idol Talk, where we explore South Korean pop culture, one obsession at a time. My name is Nathan, and I'm your host.
Hey everyone, I'm Ashley, and recently J-Hope announced that he started the process of enlisting for the military. He didn't say exactly when he was gonna leave, but that he's starting the process and that he has gifts for fans before he leaves.
He's gonna throw out some lollipops or something?
I don't know what that means. Maybe new music, goodbye concert.
I saw that he was gonna release a single before he left. So that'll be nice.
Oh, goodbye song.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Yeah, so I just want to say that I predicted this in our 2023 predictions episode. My prediction is that all BTS members are gonna leave this year.
Oh,
I just wasn't expecting.
Well, that's one.
Well, yeah, but I just wasn't expecting J-Hope to be the first one to go. I thought it was gonna be Suga, but.
Okay, we'll cover that in the next episode. All right, Gabe.
Hello everyone, it's Gabe, resident K-pop extremist. I'm really taking ownership of this title. And I recently started watching Boys Planet.
Yay.
I know I'm about like a month late, or maybe like 2 months late.
No, you're not 2 months late.
Cares.
Yeah, true.
I am hooked already. I've spent like over this weekend, I spent like 4 straight hours just watching Boys Planet.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta give it a
so
chance,
great.
probably. All right, so maybe we'll do a review of that once all of us are caught up on it. Yeah, the boys got to get a companion to Kepler, right? Isn't that the whole goal of this?
Oh yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's the whole point.
I feel like
Girls Planet, Boys Planet.
I feel like the group that comes out of Boys Planet is gonna be better than Kepler. That's just my feeling.
Okay, we'll see about that. Okay. Nice to talk to you all, Ashley and Gabe, and thanks to our listeners for tuning in to this episode. We're gonna talk about something that, I've been avoiding this news, and the hosts know that, and I would have never expected to have to discuss something like this. This definitely didn't come up in our predictions episode.
I know.
So we did
totally
fail
out
on
of
that.
the field.
But I think no one would have expected this, which is what keeps the K-pop world really interesting, I would say. We are, as if you didn't already see the title of the episode, we're going to talk about kind of all of the news behind the SM and HYBE. I'm trying to find the right word for it because the news is still breaking.
Yeah, it's not an acquisition because it hasn't happened yet.
Right. And
they're attempting an acquisition.
Yes, a merger of some sort that's not a merger.
No, it's not
integration of which
discussion?
A discussion of integration, whether or not it's wanted or not unwanted.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listeners probably know a little bit about this already, so we'll just jump into it. We'll go ahead and in this episode kind of give an overview, kind of taking a step back before all of this announcement happened. And I will just go ahead and start off by providing some historical context behind who Lee Soo Man was, who Lee Soo Man, is, and then his vision for the SM Entertainment Company and kind of how it's evolved over the last 2 decades or so, 2+ decades or so. So, for the listeners that didn't know, Lee Soo Man had very humble beginnings where he actually started off as an artist himself. So
What? Okay, JYP,
yeah,
come on.
he was JYP, but I mean, the short end of it is that he decided to call it quits like pretty early. Even though, like, upon giving it another look, he actually started and stopped and started and stopped his music performance career like several times. So in and around the 1970s, this was like the late 1970s, he debuted for the first time in a folk duo band called April and May. And after 3 months, he said no more. Like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna do this anymore. An article that I read said that he had some health problems, right? So he said 3 months, no more. But then he tried to become a solo artist. And does anyone want to guess the name of his self-titled album? Spring, interesting. That's a good one. His self-titled album name was called Lee Soo Man.
Self-entitled.
So there was actually some other activities that he was doing related to entertainment itself. And again, this was in like the pre-1985 kind of time. So he had some kind of group activities and he had a self-titled album. He also like formed a band called Lee Soo Man and the 365 Days in 1980. And that was his last attempt at the entertainment performance industry. So this was a long time ago. After that, he was like, oh, I don't think entertainment's right for me. And he leaves straight up to our good friend Ashley's alma mater. He goes to the States to pursue computer engineering.
Cal State Northridge?
At Ashley's beloved alma mater, CSUN.
What
so
the fuck?
He was pursuing a master's degree there.
Oh my god, he's like my Sunday name.
Sure. Like he could have been he was a graduate student there. So he wasn't a undergraduate.
It's hilarious.
But, if Ashley was transported like 30 years before, she might have walked in the dining hall, with Lee Soo Man or something, and she wouldn't even noticed. So he goes to CSUN for a little bit, and then, he's like, there's so much happening in the music world. This was the time of like MTV and lots of like pop stars that were coming out, and he decides that he's going to give entertainment another shot. But he's not going to perform. He is going to, try to do behind the scenes work in the music industry. So he goes back to Korea. And he tries to continue work not as a performer but as a DJ. So I would say like a DJ back then is probably like, I don't think there's too much information about this, but it's not like a contemporary DJ, right? It's probably like radio DJ or like, putting songs and playlists together and kind of mishmashing it in an older fashion, right, than we know today. But that was his beginning of kind of make it into the administrative side. And it was in 1995, which is in and around the time that the three of us were born, if I might say, right, that he created his own company called SM Studio. So SM Studio came before, and then it got renamed to SM Entertainment in 1995, which, was really the start of Lee Soo Man's vision for Korean pop and Korean idols. It was supposed to be an all-encompassing entertainment company. I think that's why I would hypothesize or theorize that he changed the name from SM Studio to SM Entertainment, because eventually it became like a full encompassing K-pop production, right? So you didn't just need to have like recording studios and singers, right, and dancers. You needed to have the background behind everything was going on, like the training infrastructure and the dorms and right the dorm life and all of that. So SM Entertainment was really developed as a fully encompassing system to support different stages of an artist's career. So this leads to the different visions that he had. So the first vision that he had was SM 1.0, which was, in my take, so if I'm looking at the timeline, it was between 1995 and 2010. That's a long time in the K-pop world. So I would break it down into two major time periods. One is like the founding of K-pop, and then two is like building the foundation for K-pop, for what we know as K-pop today, within SM 1.0. So the founding of K-pop, right? We think about one of the like some of the earliest SM groups, and actually we know a lot of them because a lot of the contemporary artists have covered a lot of the work, right? So the debut of HOT, we now know because of the children's big remake hit Candy, which is still charting, so I see. Came out with Candy in 1996, and then aespa did a reboot of SCS's Dreams Come True last year, and SCS debuted in 1997. And both of these groups are considered like one of the earliest first groups to debut. So really highly regarded groups, kind of laid the foundation of like, what is all of this? Like, what does all of this culture mean? So I think SM in their 1.0 phase of their founding was a lot of kind of laying out kind of vision of what K-pop would be in that time and then moving forward. So moving from that, we're still in SM 1.0, but then afterwards, like we're thinking about groups like, or artists like BoA, Super Junior, Girls' Generation, and even SHINee, because SHINee debuted pre-2010, so they would fall into this category. And I would consider this like, yeah, you're still kind of laying a lot of vision, and a lot of things in K-pop are still being founded. But if we're thinking about these groups, they're also very foundational groups that would soon, and still probably do, in my opinion, and that I would argue, have very substantive impacts on K-pop today. So that's why I would consider kind of this second part of SM 1.0 like K-pop foundations. So I think it's categorized by laying expectations of like, what is K-pop all about? Like thinking about how K-pop is not only music, but it's also I always say this, right? You have to be a comedian, and you have to be a good dancer, and you have to it's about the fashion. It's about these different aspects that are coming together. The styling, the production, the marketing, the stages, right? It's all kind of personality, right? It's all coming in together, to form what idols' expectations are, and also what fans expect of them. So that's what I would say kind of characterizes the second half of SM 1.0. Like thinking about like what is K-pop really, what is K-pop, and then what do fans come to expect from the K-pop world?
So Lee Soo Man really defined that.
I mean, he was kind of known as, one of the godfathers, one of the pioneers of this entire industry. Because, I mean, if he's starting his stuff like in the 90s, right? That's when all the like HOT and SCS weren't like the only first groups, but they were the earliest, right? Some of the earliest idols, of this industry. So yes, very much founding and foundational building, I would say. So that brings us to SM 2.0, which is considered the second wave of SM entertainment, which time-wise is from 2010 to 2020. And at this time, Lee Soo Man um, is actually steps down from being a board of directors in the entertainment company, but he was really still integral in the company's direction because he became an executive producer, like as his primary role. So he was very much, even more so, invested in visions for the artist, creative direction, um, and thinking about like the innovative concepts that kind of came out between 2010 and 2020. So he was really still like integral with the artists and what they were, their role was going to be in the K-pop world, and also probably in discussion with them as well. So
yeah, so he was more, he didn't want to do the business side anymore. He just wanted to be like
visionary, but with the artist work.
Right.
And I think about as I reflected on the SM Family concert back in the summer in a previous episode, I talked about how Lee Soo Man it seemed like he had such good rapport with his artists, and this was probably one of the reasons why, is because he kind of moved from a board of directors position to a like more creative side, right? Like a creative vision side. So he was probably really integrated with. He had a lot of FaceTime with the artists, I would suspect, because of this.
And it seems like that's originally what he wanted. You know, like he was an artist, firstly.
And he was an artist, firstly, yes.
And a businessman, secondary.
Yeah.
So
he went back to probably what he wanted to do. Maybe he knew that he wasn't going to be the best producer, so he wanted to still work with artists, essentially. Yeah. So during this time, we can think of also foundational, well-known groups, EXO, Red Velvet, and like it goes through 2020, right? So we do also have to include NCT and aespa, all of which are very different from one another. They kind of bring something new to the K-pop world. Like we think of the two most recent ones. We think of NCT being like a ever expanding unit, right? That was had a dream unit with specific rules and regulations, had visions for expansion to different parts of the world, right? Thank God we're not getting NCT Hollywood, in my opinion. But and NCT Tokyo is coming out, right, in the next couple of months with, well, we can get to that announcement later. But, you know, with aespa being so integrated in avatars and AI, right? Like thinking about how this all fits into the contemporary world, right? So it seemed like Lee Soo Man had a big hand in the creative direction here as well. And, you know, there's so much success, I would say, going on here. So this brings us to, I mean, like 10 years later. I know that like we're just trying to pack in everything here. But the next iteration kind of came up recently. And it's moving from SM 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, right? So it's kind of like the iPhones or something, you know? Like iPhone 1, iPhone 2, iPhone 15, right? So now this brings us to the post 20s in early 2023. We now see that the different CEOs of the company have laid out, you know, I think some might argue that it's a new vision, and some might say that it's a vision that moves the company forward, right? And the CEO shared that the 3.0 series is supposed to, quote, and this is their hope, right, to, quote, expand the Korean, Asian, and global fandom and respond to changes in the market. So we can talk more about this and I think Ashley might touch upon this a little bit, and we're going to touch upon this in a second series. But, thinking about how, I mean, I would argue that the Hallyu wave, like, probably happened within, right, SM 2.0, but it wasn't part of their vision as strongly to cater to, like, a larger fandom, right? This ever expanding globalized world fandom, right? So they're explicitly saying, at least for me, that they're going to cater to some changes in globalization, right? In the decade 2020 and onward. So that's a little bit about what went on in the previous history of the company, and then that kind of brings us to today really quickly. Obviously there's lots of if, ands, or buts, but this is just kind of like a high level overview. And the reason why we're overviewing this is because, well, Ashley, do you want to take us away here?
Yeah. So, Gabe, do you have anything to say before we move on to my portion?
I will say the Hallyu wave thing is very on point because, like, I feel like especially now with Gen Z, K-pop is becoming like a very ubiquitous thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when we were their age, like, I don't think it really kind of was at that level of like universality and
Right.
like global like reach.
Agreed.
Like when we were in like high school, it wasn't at the same kind of level of notoriety.
Right. Just really quickly, I think about like the songs that I heard apart from Gangnam Style, right? I would say apart from Gangnam Style, the huge hits that made it to me as a non-K-pop consumer, right, I would still not hear on the radio, right? So I think about Taeyong's Wedding Dress, right?
Iconic.
Classic. Right? But I would never hear it on the radio.
Yeah.
So, like, I was standing at a boba shop the other day, and I was like, "Wait, is that Ditto? Wait, huh?" I still get a shock. There's still a shock factor there,
right?
But it's also not surprising anymore. Kind of given how easily K-pop can move, right? So, anyways, okay, Ashley.
Yeah. So, to add on to Nathan's summary of the vision that Lee Soo Man had, in the background, Lee Soo Man, he started off in 1.0 as like the CEO. He was on the business side. And then 2.0, he becomes sole executive producer, meaning that he is like head of all of the music and like output of SM Entertainment. All the ideas for groups, everything, all the music, it flows through him. And I say that because he really profited from these roles as CEO and founder and executive producer. When he moved to executive producer, and his nephew and other dude, I have no idea who this other dude is, I just know him as like co-CEO. When they became CEOs, they I don't know if they weren't aware of all of the stuff that Lee Soo Man was doing in the background in terms of how much he was profiting.
Like the degree of involvement?
Yeah, the degree of money that he was receiving from the company.
Because of his heavy involvement.
Correct.
Okay.
And even up until like last year, there are quotes of his nephew like, ride or die, K-pop would be nothing without Lee Soo Man, like, we need him. But now, with the announcement of 3.0, and the sale of shares to Kakao, there's been a lot of politics between the executives at SM, and there's a lot of like anger that the nephew has towards Lee Soo Man because of all of the money that he made throughout those 2 decades as CEO and executive producer. So, to go into detail about how much money Lee Soo Man actually made, I'm referencing a Dispatch article that was released at the beginning of February. It's very detailed, and it was translated by Koreaboo, which amazingly, like, converted the Korean won numbers to US numbers, so it was, like, very easy to understand. I'll link it in the bio. But anyway, over the course of 23 years, Lee Soo Man made $577 million off of SM Entertainment.
Oh my god.
And like I said,
Wait, sorry, what? How many years?
23 years.
Jesus.
I don't know what the breakdown is per year, and obviously it varies based upon like popularity and the economy and the different stock prices.
But on average,
like,
we good. He's good.
Yeah, he's chillin'.
Well, apparently not chillin', because once you get that much, I guess you just want more?
Right. So maybe in the article that I'm referencing, Dispatch described it as like money hungry and greedy. And shady. There was a little bit of like illegal action on the way that he made this money. And like I said, I don't know if the nephew and other CEO knew about much of this stuff up until recently when they announced, or maybe they did know about it, which is why they announced 3.0 to move to a multi-producer system. So, the way that Lee Soo Man made this money was through different mergers of companies that he founded, and then through licensing fees and managing fees of SM artists. So, through the mergers, I'll first start off with like the thing that gave him the most amount of money, which is getting SM listed on the Korean Stock Exchange, the KOSAC. There's like a minimum amount you need to have in capital in order to be listed on the stock exchange, and SM's capital was nowhere near that, like 5% of the minimum requirement. So what they did is they released new shares so that investors can come in with money and buy these shares, which ultimately increases the value of your company. What Lee Soo Man did that was illegal was he withdrew money from SM Entertainment to buy those shares that were issued. So basically, it's not like new money that was entering the company. It was the company's money that was re-entering the company. But it made it look as though like they had all this new income, and then they were able to meet the requirement to get listed on the stock exchange. So ultimately, this is like embezzlement fraud. And back in, 2000, I think, he got put on like Interpol, which is like this international policing governing body. He got put on like a most wanted list because of this embezzlement. And he got sentenced like, 2 years of 3 years of probation. Like, he didn't do any jail time. He somehow got out of it because he has really good attorneys. But he got punishment, basically. And through
too early to retract the Lord and Savior comments?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
100% we're retracting that. Because I don't know if this is common knowledge. Like, all of this...
I would not suspect that this is common knowledge.
Right. I mean, he did go go to jail, and that was probably a big, like...
Okay, so basically, as you were mentioning in our chat, all CEOs have issues.
Yeah. Like, he really wanted to quickly raise money for this company, and he did that through embezzlement. And through that whole deal getting SM listed on the stock exchange, he ended up with like almost 70% shares in the company. I don't know how this is possible, and honestly, I've like a lot of this like merger like financial stuff is a little bit different. Like Korean investment is different than American investment. There's different rules,
right?
And so, like my husband is in investments, and he was like, "This doesn't make any sense." And we were like, "Oh yeah, because it's in Korea. They probably
different rules.
We don't know Korean investment. We're no experts here." Anyway, so he ended up after that whole thing. He ended up with like 70% shares in the company. Then he went through this like process of selling those shares. And through that, he made like what? $20 million here, like another $5 million, like another year. He also somehow got shares for his mom and dad, and they were able to pocket like $5 million, $12 million each, you know? So everyone's making money from this deal. Then he founds these two companies, SM Enterprise and CT Planning. These two companies merge with, well, actually, these two companies are like contracted through SM, meaning that, so SM Enterprise is actually, hold on, now I'm getting my stuff confused. SM Enterprise is a company that manages artists. And so they're considered just like a line item in the production costs. Like, of the money, like 20% of all, I think it's profits, goes to SM Enterprise. Maybe not profits, maybe revenue. And then, Like Planning is a music consultation and licensing fee, where 15% of album sales go to this company as a commission. So Lee Soo Man is like the founder of these two companies. So he's working at SM Entertainment. He's the founder of these two other companies. So he's getting paid for 3 companies. He's getting 20% of like revenue from, I mean, not him, the company, but he's on the payroll at that like,
he's on the payroll
managing.
3 times.
He's on the payroll 3 times. So he's getting paid 3 times. And then through like those other companies, like the managing company and the licensing company, like he's just raking it in. And eventually SM Enterprise merges with SM Entertainment, so he loses that like
second payroll,
second income, I guess, and he's just has the 2
But he has
incomes.
a bigger payroll on the first one.
Right. And then he also, so he has Like Planning, which is the licensing company, production company, music consultation company. He also creates CT Planning Limited, which is established in Hong Kong and gets 6% of sales for all overseas like output. So he's getting money from Korea, he's getting money from Japan, China, United States, all these different things, and he was starting to get like very, very greedy. And towards the end of maybe sometime in 2021, when the talks with Kakao first started happening, I think that's when like the CEO's anger started to boil, because they were just realizing how much money Lee Soo Man was making, and like in the time that he was making all this money, these are like contractual agreements that the company needs to pay to him. You know, like they need to pay him 6% of album sales because he's the executive producer, and that's a licensing fee. You know, even when SM went to the United States and did a deal with Capitol Records, part of that contract was 6% of album sales goes to Lee Soo Man
Direct
for licensing fees. So this was like boiling the CEO's blood, which made them want to establish 3.0, establishing a multi-producer system, essentially like trying to push Lee Soo Man out.
Or maybe not out, just
maybe decrease the amount of money that he was receiving.
And essentially responsibility, right, as an externality.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe I think they saw the money that he was making as like exorbitant. So if they could decrease the amount of money that they pay him and pay other producers, then the production costs won't be so high overall. You know,
it's kind of like having that senior colleague in your department or in whatever work area you are that has just accrued so much that maybe they're doing the same amount of work, but you need to pay them more because they've been there for like decades. That's how I kind of see it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but it just sucks for the company, like SM Entertainment, because there were times, like especially in 2008, where the stock price tanked, and it was going for like less than $1 a share. So they were in the red. The company was in the red. And the Dispatch article says, like, had they not had to pay Lee Soo Man his contracted 6%, 20%, 15%, whatever amount it was at the time, like the revenue margin would have been greater. So it like those hard times wouldn't have hurt so badly. And this article described it as like just like CEO greed, just like money hungry type of thing. Yes.
Well, it's good. So when I'm hearing all of this, it sounds like if the company had ever gone under, like it would have been attributed to a large part of it would have been attributed
lack
to
of performance,
Lee Soo Man's way of handling it, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, he got really lucky that like it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, the article describes his like management style as actually mismanagement. Yeah. And I want to share a portion of this article that maybe will resonate with us on how like money hungry he was. So, for example, aespa was supposed to release an album last year, and let me just find my note on this, just so I can quote it directly from the article.
aespa did release an album last year. So what is this?
I think they were
like another
supposed
one?
to release another one, or like something like that. Anyway, so aespa was supposed to release something, and in that release, Lee Soo Man was like really pushing for his vision of sustainability and
Like environmental sustainability.
Environmental sustainability. So he really wanted to add lyrics in their song about like greenism.
Interesting. Okay.
Planting trees. Like he wanted those words in the song. Planting trees, which maybe could go well with the concept of aespa, you know, like
I don't know.
I don't know. And so it caused a lot of like internal strife between production because he was really trying to push this like
an agenda.
And it ultimately that's why the release of aespa got delayed because of all this like back and forth.
I see.
Yeah. So yeah, Lee Soo Man, I don't know if he would be characterized as Lord and Savior anymore. I mean,
yeah, probably.
I also don't know if this Dispatch article is biased. I mean, the title of the article is like 118 facts. So maybe, but I mean, the way that they are writing is,
and that's going to be hard to I mean, so we're
biased.
we are trying to do our best to give a non-biased opinion of it, right? But we also don't have the connotation behind, we don't have the full context and connotation behind Korean written articles, so disclaimer.
Yeah. So all this to say, this is what led up to the announcement of the Kakao partnership where they acquired, I think it was 9% shares, and then the announcement of 3.0 where they're
SM 3.0.
SM 3.0 where they're trying to establish like a multi-production system.
Okay, so we'll leave this at that for today, giving the listeners some background, and then we'll be back in the second part of our series to discuss more about the aftermath of the Kakao Talk shares, and then also detail more and have a conversation about SM 3.0 in the next series installment of this probably ever developing HotTake Hotteok.
Yeah.
So, with that, we thank you for tuning into this first part. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at IdleTalkPod and rate, review, and subscribe to us on all of our major podcast directories and streaming platforms. If you have any feedback or content requests, please email us at idletalkpod@gmail.com. And lastly, we have our content directory, idletalkpod.uwu.ai, where you'll see previous episodes categorized, including song playlist, recommendations, concert and K-drama reviews, as well as information about us, and it could be found in the description of our episodes here. Well, until next time, we know that more will be breaking as we finish off today, but we'll talk to you all next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm Vivian Yoon. Listen to K-Pop Dreaming from Elias Studios. I grew up in Koreatown in the 90s, and my friends and I could not get enough of K-pop.
Do you remember SES?
Yeah.
Yes.
Come true.
So how did the music that only Korean and Korean Americans listen to become a global cultural force? And what role did LA and Koreatown play in K-pop's rise? K-Pop Dreaming. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.